very sad incident. It could have happened to one of your siblings, a daughter of yours, or a son of yours. Recently, we had the case of food poisoning incident in Mukumu Gulf and another one in Butere Boys. While those are the only schools that have come in the public limelight, there are several cases that we haven't heard of. So, we're going to discuss on some of the food safety challenges in schools and other institutions. So my first question, maybe we'll go to Professor Catherine. Like, we know the structure of schools, we know their complexity. How best can we implement food safety regulations and policies in such institutions?
Okay, thank you. I just want to wish first to add what you just said. It's not just what was reported in this particular school. Actually, with food safety issues, we have lack of data. If you talk to your children, and many people, they'll experience some symptoms that clearly show they ate contaminated food with pathogens. I have a daughter also in high school, and whenever she tells me of food poisoning, because I interact with her, she tells me, Mom, and I know what is the source. So actually, the ones that are not reported, the cases are much higher. And that is a general challenge we have as a country. We do not have proper reporting. So we might have policies, regulations, like we have regulations even for those schools, outlining what can and should be done. But the problem is, these cases are not reported. I'll come closer home. In the university the other day, towards Christmas, these functions that we go dinners, last dinners before you go for your Christmas break. We also had food poisoning, and we lost one of our ICT person. Look at the case that you saw on Citizen. They were brought food from the outside, from a private company. People got sick. So if you look at the ones that you just hear and the ones that you do not know, there are so many. Now, the problem comes, we do not have reliable supply chains. So when you come to schools, for example, and ask them, where do they get their water, where do they get their maize, their beans, their meat? Even themselves, they are not sure. The people supplying them the food, they are not able to trace back. For example, if there was an outbreak of salmonella, maybe, or E. coli, and maybe suspected meat, sometimes it's difficult for them because they'll be brought meat by a usual supplier. But they don't know where that goat, for example, that cow, where was it slaughtered? Was it under hygienic conditions? How was it transported? For them, because that person receiving that meat in the school, let's say the cook or the chef, they are not aware of hygienic practices. They are not aware about sourcing, what they should look for to ensure that whatever they are cooking for these kids is actually safe for human consumption. For them, they'll proceed, they'll cook, and the kids will eat. For us, with the knowledge, for example, I can tell you meat that is spoiled, but not many people, especially the ones that are cooking for our children in schools, the custodian of these kids, they don't even know basic hygiene practices. They don't know even what temperatures are adequate for cooking, internal core temperatures of meat that we sometimes check. So basically, luckily, what actually saves us as a country, and I like this, I keep saying this, is that we cook our meat well, properly, like you just boil your meat, then you fry it, yeah? But if we were to eat like medium rare or rare like the other countries, I don't know, most of us would be dead. But thank God that we cook our meat properly, and as you know, most pathogens at high temperatures, you are able to destroy them. So I would simply say there are those basic training that we need to put our caregivers through, that we need to train people. But look at it also, as a government, as a country, do we have enough experts, professionals, and especially food safety professionals who are out there who can actually do this, can promote education, can create awareness of hygiene measures and other things we do not have. You can count the number of food safety professionals in Kenya. So we need to do more. We need to train. We need to do awareness creation. I don't like saying policy because we have policies. If there's something that we are good in Africa, is writing policies, guidelines, strategies. Those ones I can tell you, I can give you a whole folder. But the actual implementation of what we are talking about, and food safety is about action. action has to be taken to assure that whatever you're giving a consumer is actually safe. And I keep saying this, we cannot say we are food secure as a country ever if we are not providing safe and nutritious food. So food safety has been a component that has been ignored, and that's why we can never achieve food security. And I'm glad that this panel discussion will actually touch, among other issues, those food safety issues that are affecting the country. Over to you.
Now, you brought in the issue of training, and you said that we have maybe a lack of capacity to do that. How can these schools invest in such training? Maybe just anyone, or if you want to add an addition. Okay.
Thank you. I just want to pick from where my colleague has left it. So when we look at the recent cases of food poisoning in our schools and the colleges, and even not only schools and universities, we also have had cases even in the TVET colleges. So it's a global emerging challenge on food safety in our institutions. Now, why is it emerging mostly in the institutions? Because we have a mass population of consumers who should be given safe food. Now, when we look at the training of the staff who are handling that food, as my colleague has mentioned, some of them have no idea on food safety. Now, in fact, there's a recent study which was done on how the handlers, the food handlers, how much training they have, or what attitude or perception do they have on food safety. You find that somebody is trained on food safety, but the actual practice, as he said, he is not practicing what he's trained on. So there are major challenges on food safety, and it came out early in the year when our schools had infections, several infections and deaths. It was quite unfortunate, but now the training bit, there are many ways in which we can rescue this. One of them is training. So our food handlers need to be trained. Apart from the regular medical tests, we need also to train our food handlers. As we said, there are policies. In fact, there's a policy on safety in schools. There's a policy which was enacted in 2008. If you look at that policy, whatever we are suffering from, they are well enumerated in that policy. But now the implementation is the problem. If you are to follow the policies the way they are, we would not be where we are. So among what is suggested or proposed in the policies is the training of the food handlers. Also, when you look at the equipment which we use in preparing our food, the equipment needs to be quote-unquote safe equipment. You find that where you are cutting your meat, you are not washing it year in, year out. Whatever is collected there remains there. Now, when this issue of food poisoning in schools happened, it came abruptly. So everybody was trying his bit to rescue the situation. In fact, there are many tests which were done. First was aflatoxin. Tests on aflatoxin were done. The social media was also upbeat about possible causes of the poisoning. Now, several consignments of the maize and the beans, because the main culprits were maize and beans. So those were tested. Some of them tested positive, but most of them tested negative. Then there was the preservative. So when you have a big consignment of cereals, normally we preserve, there's a way we preserve them. So when you use the preservative, you need to give the withdrawal time, enough withdrawal time for the residues. So you find some of our institutions don't give enough withdrawal time, so that you still have the residues on the cereals. So when it is being milled or ground, you still have the residues on the cereals. So there was a chemical which was suspected to be the cause. So that was also tested. There were also the heavy metals which were tested. So apart from the food, there was the issue of the water. The water supply and the piping of the water. You find that some institutions have very old pipes which are rusted or contaminated in one way or another. Then the tanks which we use, do we normally clean our tanks regularly? Or after installing a tank, it is there to stay forever? So all these were examined. Then there was the microbiological part of it. And I think there was even a statement which was issued on Salmonella typhi and E. coli. So it can, whatever poisoning we have in our institution can be caused by a varied number of causative agents. Contamination, the microbiological part. But the key thing is when we are getting the tender for, or when we are giving out the tender for the supply of our cereals, is it done in a way that we take care of food safety? Because one case was where we had the tendering process was so fraudulent that the kind of cereals you found in that institution, even at just the physical examination, you can't even look at the maize twice. But still, the maize was taken and fed to the students. So it calls upon all of us to take part in this food safety issue. And I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Okay. So as I was asking, how now can we invest in continuous training? We already know some schools have limited capacity, lack of funds and everything, but you want to now train these food handlers. How can we invest in that to ensure that there is no repeat of this? Maybe Bruce can take over.
All right, thank you so much. On the issue of training, I think that if we look at it from our perspective as food professionals, we might want to take, start going into how the structure of the E. coli 0157, we would want to start going into these details. And sometimes we have a meeting of heads of schools and someone is brought and we disseminate this information to heads of schools or maybe even the matron or someone like that. But then at the end of the day, there is the cook that actually handles the food. But that guy has never been in any one of those classes. Maybe even the training has not been made in a language that they can actually hear and understand. Sometimes we talk about sorting out raw versus ready to eat, but we have not gone down to that guy and told him, here are 2 chopping boards. You will not chop vegetables on the board that you will chop meat. As in, when it comes down to this level, it is this total basics. We are at primaries over here. And so WFP, for example, as an example, feeds 481 million children accessing school meals every year across the globe. And this is a huge mandate because the reputational risk that such an organization runs, because the people that they are giving these foods don't have an options to issues like access to proper health care. So we take so much care to safeguard the food itself. And one of the key things that we do is just that basic. What do? We create a chart. And we go to the cooks themselves and we say, this is raw, this is what is called ready to eat. You will not touch meat and then go and distribute the fruits to the students. This you will leave to another person. The guy who is boiling water will not place them in jerry cans that they have not washed. So we are down at the ground, can I say splitting hairs on basics, for example. So what I mean to say with this is, how can we do this? We must go down to the very ground where the food is actually being handled. We've had a good relationship with local governments, with their public health officers, but they can just do as much. There must be that, can I say, trickling of information where trainers are trained to train trainers and the PHOs are training the matrons, and the matrons actually train the cooks, and the cooks actually are being followed up and monitored to see that they're actually doing this. And I like the issues that were brought out by my fellow panelists, the role that water plays, because we distribute food, but what water is going to be used to prepare the food, how is that handled? I think that is also a very key issue to bring into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we head over to the technology sides of things. Mr. Sharif, how can we leverage technology and data to improve food safety in these institutions?
Hello. Right. Well, my fellow panelists have made my job very easy, and I'm very happy to hear things which we should be right now discussing. I mean, you talked about having different chopping boards. I mean, there are different color-coded chopping boards now available to handle veggies and to handle raw meat separately, right? You talked about hygiene monitoring. I mean, you talked about hygiene practices. We are discussing the right things actually in this forum. But what I would like to share is, we have youngsters here and we have elders also here. In my childhood, I remember we never used to have processed food. We have never eaten processed food. If my mother has to cook meat, we used to go buy 1 hour before the cooking, and we used to buy raw meat, bring home and cook, right? That practice has changed. We go once in a week to a mall, we buy frozen meat and we bring and freeze it inside the refrigerator. So practices have changed over the years. And so is the concern about food safety, right? So what I'm taking a cue from you, now there are options available, because I'm from a solution provider company. There are options available where you can take a swab from a chopping board and you can check if there is any raw meat residue still left or not. Because if there is any raw meat residue, that's a potential source where a salmonella or an E. coli or any other harmful pathogen can survive and grow and cause contamination basically, right? Another thing is the need for speed in testing. We have been still following age-old practices in testing. Salmonella takes 5 days, 7 days. Legionella takes 14 days. Eastern mold takes 5 to 7 days. Are we moving towards rapid testing? That is another area we should be thinking about, right? So there are options available where you can test Eastern mold, which currently takes 7 days, you can now test in 6 hours. Salmonella in 24 hours instead of 5 days. Legionella in 5 to 6 hours instead of 14 days. So these are the options now available. Coming to hygiene monitoring, nobody thinks about monitoring hygiene, right? Everything starts with hygiene monitoring. If you have a safe food preparation area, the probability that your food will be safe will be very high. And I can tell you from my exposure to entire region that I cover, I can tell you, if only our food handlers are taught about the advantage of just simple, proper hand washing technique, 50% of the issues will be reduced, and I guarantee you that. Only a practice of teaching proper hand hygiene, and I guarantee you 50% of the issues will be resolved. So that is what I would like to share here. I mean, another thing besides the outbreak is, you all must have heard about food fraud, right? Meat, beef being mixed with horse meat, donkey meat, zebra meat, dog meat, right? So food fraud is a big concern. Along with food fraud, allergen is a big concern, right? Celiac disease is growing. People who are allergic to gluten, that is also growing. So we need to think about everything. I mean, today it's an outbreak about salmonella and E. coli. Tomorrow it could be an outbreak about something else, right? So we need to think about, holistically think about a complete food safety solution for our institutions and our schools, basically. So that's my take.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif. We have another monster that is cropping up. You want to add something before I continue?
Yes. Thank you so much, panelists. When it comes to food safety, I think it's everybody's responsibility. Don't leave it to others. I come from an integrated poultry management system where we rear, we hatch, and process chicken. We also process feeds. But without a proper risk-based approach on how to manage hazards at all levels, right from reception of raw materials and throughout processing until we dispatch the final products to the final clients. So it's a complex system, but we really need to do a lot. We don't have to leave it to processors. We don't have to leave it to the government. Neither should we leave it to someone down there cooking. But it has to start from the grassroots. I just advise the government. They should have a proper system that is able to address food safety issues right from the grassroots, right from the farmers. By the time they reach us, the secondary processors, we are obtaining a safe raw material which we shall transform further into a quality product. Normally, garbage in is garbage out. If you start with a contaminated raw material, just know at the end of it all, quality will not improve along the process, but you'll end up with a contaminated final product, which will transfer the hazards you got from the beginning to the what? To the consumers. And all of us would not want to be part of the people who would get foodborne illnesses. Hello? Because of negligence. We have to work hard, right from down up to top, and ensure if you train people, for instance, the issues that has happened in schools in Kenya, even maybe in Uganda it's there, but it's not reported, though we've not had a major one like that. We have to train and empower staff. Most of the schools here in Africa and the whole of the world, we have laboratories. We are only taught, test starch, test this. Let's put those laboratories in schools to use. We can do our own testing. There is no university here in Africa or globally. There is no university without a laboratory. We can do the testing. You can test your own food before you allow your students or your pupils to eat it. So let's make use of the laboratories as we adhere to the standards. Thank you so much.
Just hold the mic, Grace. As I was saying, there's this monster cropping up called antimicrobial resistance.
Yes.
And we find that it's a challenge for developing countries to deal with it. How can we deal with these challenges?
Yeah, antimicrobial resistance. Yeah, when you look at my background, we are rearing chicken. And when we rear chicken, there are times challenges of disease outbreak. And in such a scenario, the veterinary doctors would advise we shall use such and such an antibiotic on this chicken. And the question goes, do you give them the right doses? Do you observe the drug withdrawal period? The person receiving your chicken at the end of the day at the abattoir to start processing, are you delivering it with a rightful broiler health declaration where you tell him the feed was withdrawn at such and such a time and we applied such and such a drug which was withdrawn in such and such a period? Do we follow that? Because if we don't do that, then the antimicrobial resistance will occur. If, for instance, the birds were given tetracycline and you send those birds to the abattoir to be processed, then the customer eats it with tetracycline. At the end of the day, that customer will become sick, but when he goes to the doctor, he will not be able to heal in case they are given tetracycline. They will opt for high-profile antibiotics rather than tetracycline, which is really very bad. You'll find there are a lot of people who have fallen ill, and they really have antimicrobial resistant microorganisms. You'll find they have particular organisms like the Salmonella typhi. You'll find there are some colleagues, it can be your sister, it can be your friend or someone out there. They are treating typhoid every 3 months. That means that that person has antimicrobial resistance somewhere. So even if they are given drugs, they just try to stabilize a little, but they are not completely healed, which is really bad. So in this, as we attend this summit, we should put into consideration that if you are a farmer there, a veterinary doctor somewhere, a food processor somewhere, make sure that in case you have animals or anything you treated with a drug, be it a crop in the garden, please observe the withdrawal period to ensure that the chemicals in that drug are completely broken down or denatured by the time the consumer eats that food. Thank you.
The Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that annually there are about 700,000 people who die from antimicrobial resistance-related infections. And if you're not careful, by 2050, we are going to reach about 10 million. So just give the mic to Dr. Aloo. To Aloo. I'll give the mic to Aloo. Okay. So how can we promote the responsible use of these antimicrobials to that illiterate farmer who doesn't even go to the vet? They just go to the chemist and buy these drugs, give their animals.
Thank you. Okay, antimicrobial resistance is a big debate now, and the causes are as varied as what they affect. Now, how we can help the farmer who just goes to the vet? I think the first thing is sensitization. We need really to do awareness on AMR nationally, or is it globally? So there are various ways we can do this through sensitization in the media, like radios, like the FM radios, more so the vernacular FM radios. The vernacular FM radios might be ignored, but the audience they attract is quite huge. We can start from there. Now, the farmers mostly have their societies. You can also do the sensitization at the level of the societies. Now, at the individual levels, we can also try to fight this war against AMR. Even as when we are taking antibiotics, do we take the full dosage? Or we take tetracycline, then when we start feeling better, we ignore the other part of the dose. Then the following day when we feel bad, we go back to we don't even go to a doctor, we go to the pharmacist. Then we take another antibiotic, we are given yet another antibiotic. Then the cycle continues. So we should start from ourselves, at least for those of us who have some bit of knowledge on AMR. We should start from ourselves as we disseminate the knowledge to the wider population. Thank you.
Any addition, Professor Kunyanga?
As much as I agree we need to do farmer education and awareness creation, I'm thinking of my mother in the village. Definitely some of the drugs or medicine we are talking about, they have no clue. You tell them those terminologies, they have no clue. Mine I will throw back to the government, to the regulatory agencies. We really need to increase agricultural education and extension. The other day I was talking to someone and he asked me, you are an associate dean in a faculty. Do you have a program on agricultural education and extension? I told him yes, in the Department of Agricultural Economics. And we graduate students every year. And then I asked, where do they go? Why don't they take this knowledge to the farmers? Why are farmers relying on input suppliers or agrovet for advice? Because realistically, when you say vets you'll get is one per county, for example. An extension officer, one, and they have to cover the entire county with one motorbike. So we really need to see realistics on the ground. For me, I like being realistic. It's the role of the government to ensure every sub-county, every ward, at least has some extensionists who are transferring these technologies to the farmers. this is the right drug, this is the right medicine. The other day, I saw they actually even have apps for even varieties of maize. For example, now my mother has a phone. She even knows WhatsApp. So you can actually text. She can text and say, which drug should I give? Or text a vet med, instead of them just going to someone who has no clue what they are talking about. So I think with the current technology, and I keep saying we need to take advantage of modern technology, modern innovations. That's the only way to grow. I hear the coverage of smartphones in Kenya is now 80%. That's what I'm saying. My mother, I bought her a smartphone, and she can use it. And so if I cannot reach her, and she has a phone, I can actually pass on that information. Because you cannot go sit down with my mother or that poor farmer in the village and start training them on antibiotics. You tell them AMR, they start looking, AM what? So those are the issues we are dealing with. We have more to do, and definitely we have professionals. Every year we educate people in agricultural extension. Where do they go? That's my question. And I was talking to some of our former students. They are jobless. Yeah? So I don't know.
On the issue of the AMR and the government officers on the ground, for your information, every ward, not sub-county, every ward level, there's an agricultural extension officer. But the challenge is they are not active. I was in a meeting of agricultural extension officers from various counties, and they have even a roll call of all the agricultural extension officers within the counties. They are spread all over the country. But now, some of them say we don't engage them enough. And the wards are not small geographical areas also. So we need to engage. You need to find out where our agricultural extension officers are. They are there. But the kind of knowledge they have, we are yet to find out, because I know the degree graduates are not the ones which are posted in the ward level. But they are there. They are located in every ward. Thank you.
So last year, the U.S. infant formula faced a crisis when one of its biggest plants was shut down due to a foodborne infection called Cronobacter. And there's a research done by Dr. Helen Onyeka and some other researchers that shows Cronobacter is fast creeping even into Africa. Even yet, we still face this problem of data. So maybe you can dissect for us, starting from Professor Catherine, how prevalent is it, and in which types of foods?
So when I talk about pathogens, I like saying they are our enemies. So when you want to beat your enemy, you make friends out of those enemies, right? So you have to know your enemy. Now, most of the pathogens, as I mentioned, are not easy to handle. I wouldn't tell you to even test something like Cronobacter with a rapid test, because these strains, actually it used to be called Enterobacter. It became Cronobacter because they keep changing. If you look at the E. coli we knew those days, and the E. coli we have, you hear another strain has come, immediately you've addressed that issue, another strain comes in. Now, Cronobacter for me is the worst because it tends to mostly be found in dry foods, like infant formulas. Your dry starches, your cereals, your spices, your coffee, anything that is dry, they tend to thrive there. And according to the studies, many studies that have been done, actually, in Africa we don't have much. That I can tell you, including Kenya. I was just telling one of my students, actually I need to do further study on this thing. Yeah, because we tend to focus on Salmonella, E. coli, Campylobacter, Staphylococcus, but Cronobacter, if you get it in an infant, it will cause meningitis, it will cause a lot of death, because it affects mostly the young children when they are growing, and the elderly, the vulnerable, and people who have immune-compromised symptoms. So it's rare because in Africa, again, we are lucky, just as I said, the way we cook our meat very well. In Africa, we rarely give our children infant formula, do we? Now, the young ones nowadays, they are starting. That's why you're saying it's creeping, because me, I was brought up with the banana, pumpkin, yeah? Even maybe my mother used to chew for me. They never used to have blenders. But nowadays, because of busy careers, busy education, young girls do not breastfeed anymore. So we go back to formula. And the formula, actually, it has been isolated highest in infant formulas. Now it's coming back. If you go to the supermarkets like Chandarana, here in Kafu, you will get baby section, baby food sections are now growing. I've even seen my student now wanting to do innovative food products based on baby food. Because it's never used to be there, but it's coming in, and now that means then, are we ready to handle this particular pathogen? That is my question. Are we ready? And given that we do not have data, but the good thing is we have modern technologies, modern innovation of processing that have been studied elsewhere, and we know that they work. And being a facultative anaerobe, meaning it can grow with limited oxygen and also without oxygen. And it can actually survive very high temperatures, even up to 60 degrees C, and can survive even processing. In your dry milk powder, again, these are things we never used to have, but I saw my daughter now buying milk powder. As you're saying, sir, we used to get milk directly from the cow, but we have to admit now convenience foods are here to stay because we are busy. Like by the time we get out of this place, I will not have time to cook. So we cannot ignore modern processing, yes, but some of these pathogens can actually persist, and even you can get false contamination with Cronobacter. You open your lid of the baby formula, you place in a surface, and you get that pathogen. So the issue is serious, and we need to get prepared as a continent because it's here to stay, I think. Thank you.
What does it take to get ready? What does it take to get ready?
Can I add something?
Can I add something?
You rightly said processed food is here to stay, right? We cannot go back to, I mean, the population is so big now that we have to live with processed food now going forward. From the industry point of view, from the solution provider industry point of view, what I would like to say to the audience here is we need to get ready. We need to adopt modern day fast technologies. For example, now there are kits available in real-time PCR technology. You all have heard about RT-PCR technology. So the RT-PCR technology is now at a stage where in one test you can have different targets. For example, one test can give you Enterobacteriaceae, Cronobacter, and when you cover Enterobacteriaceae in Cronobacter, you automatically cover Salmonella, Shigella, and Yersinia. So these modern day technologies which are validated and proven and highly accurate, is specificity of close to 99%. So these are all accurate technologies now available where you don't have to wait for 7 days or 10 days, you get result within 24 hours. So time has come, you need to be open about adopting these newer technologies. If you are going to have a robust procedure for food safety here in Kenya. That's my take.
Bruce, do you have something to say?
Yeah, thank you. I like the snippet that Professor threw in, saying the E. coli we had last year is not the one we have this year. Actually, there are about 6 now new enumerated E. coli that at least were documented by end of 2022. And one of the key reasons for this type of differences in pathogen biology, actually, surprisingly to me actually, was climate change. And one of the things that people were pointing at was that, say, for example, last year in Kenya, Ethiopia, parts of Djibouti, in the Horn, we had like one of the worst droughts in 40 years. If there's a pathogen that, for example, was waiting for the next rainy season in the ground, there is a possibility, as scientists now tell us, for these spores to be able to kind of adapt their own biology differently to be able to stay a longer period than was necessary to stay without water. So by the time this next rainy season comes and we have this, when coming in, we have this flourishing of this spore, we have a very different pathogen that we're dealing with other than that. And I agree. I'm actually kind of like, we are lucky that the foods that we have here as dry foods are mostly grains and flours, probably in that direction, and not because infant formula is a very rich type of mixture. You have just a balance of sugars, salts, milk solids. Things are happening in there that are able to sustain almost any type of pathogen that rarely even passes on top of it. But then we have the dry foods that we are mostly into, like Mom was pointing out. For example, like ujis that we are raising the kids with. We have a situation of, say, the fungal growth there, rising into mycotoxins, going into the area of kids being exposed to like the fungal toxins and stuff of that nature. But then right now we're becoming keen as a nation, for example, to be able to analyze before processing. For example, in our flour mills, we're analyzing mycotoxins for levels that we want. However, if this maize is sent back, and as has been rightly pointed by this ABO panel, without food safety, there's no food security. So you reject it at the large flour mills, but then it ends up as food for animals. It's feed, right? Then we have it again as animal feed, so it comes back around the food value chain, and now it's even in milk, which we didn't want to give young kids, and now kids are also exposed to this. And so you bring in a really core emerging issue in this area of food safety. And as Professor points out, really we need to be ready, and some of the readiness would mean being equipped before such things become prevalent in our area, because as the consumer trends are changing, for sure it will be an issue for us. Maybe 5-10 years, but it will be. Thank you.
And before we end the panel, you guys will tell me, what does it take to get ready? You will have to answer it. Yes.
Thank you so much. Fellow panelists, Doctor, you've mentioned it well. When it comes to pathogenic microorganisms, where Cronobacter is part of it, we really have a lot to do. Let's just know that microorganisms, not all microorganisms are bad. Others are good and others are bad, according to the way we are trained and the facts we get from science. The pathogenic ones cause diseases. And we should know they are prevalent, they are actually available elsewhere. Actually, they are really part of us, like Charles mentioned. If I take a swab on your body and I do the microbial analysis, by the time we finish to do the total plant count, you will neither believe whether it's your body or not. So microorganisms, pathogenic ones, are part of us. And the only thing we have to do is to create an environment where we can stop them from multiplying. If you're in food processing and you do good hygiene practices, you do your HACCP very well, and you do your PRPs properly, you will find you are doing the right thing. If you're able to control right from the farm, through processing, up storage, during storage, and the time of dispatch, and the final product will always be okay. So what we have to know, the microorganisms here are part of us, and we only have to put in place control measures that will not enable them grow. The Cronobacter, for instance, it grows in the infant formula, it grows in our starches, in our tea. So it's really hard to completely get rid of such an organism. It's only when you give conditions that are not favorable, it will always fail to grow. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And maybe I pose a question to my audience. How sure are you that the food you ate for lunch is safe? How safe was it? How many drank a bottle of water today? Or took some coffee today? How many have walked to the Expo and taken some coffee in some plastic cups? How many?
As an audience, I can share, I had a chicken pie. I had a chicken pie for lunch, and I'm not very comfortable. So I'll tell you tomorrow morning whether it was safe or not. As an audience.
You took some water today? How sure are you? You didn't take some microplastics in this water or in that cup of coffee? How sure are you? So maybe Lawrence, tell us what are some of the... Okay.
That's a very good question you posed to the audience. Now, I want to put myself as an audience there and as a consumer. So, if I was a consumer, how sure am I that whatever I've taken since I came here was safe? So, it also boils down to our personal responsibility in food safety. So, how are we handling the food when it was served? So, the food might have been safe, but the point at which it reached us and we handled it and we consumed it, maybe the food safety issue was brought about during our handling of the food. So it is a collective responsibility, not only to the agencies, not only to the academia or the research people, but even us to the consumer. Now you can...
Okay. I wanted to ask you, like, how does plastic enter food? What are some of the pathways that plastics enter the food chain?
Okay, plastics... we start from packaging. Now we have different types of packaging. We have the plastics, we have the tin. So plastics, there are some form of plastics, or what we call microplastics, which can migrate into certain types of food. So we have some types of foods which should not be packaged in plastics. And there are various categorization. I don't have them ready, but now you need to really look at the food item you are dealing with. What is the recommended packaging? Is it a packaging which will involve the migration of the microplastics into the food? Yeah, so it is a major issue now. The microplastics is a big issue now, and we really need to take care.
All right. On the issue of microplastics, very exciting always. By the way, as you were giving the example of water, you have noticed that the water that we drink, packed in this particular bottle, has an expiry date, right? But I hope that we are together, that water doesn't expire, right? We are together up to there, right? No, I see we are not together. We are not together. Water doesn't expire, okay? So what is the expiry date here for? It's actually for the packaging material itself, right? This is PET, yeah? The main ingredient here, the 50% of phthalates that are here, the half-life is so extended that when this is thrown into the environment, breaking down over periods of time, it's still not yet disintegrated, but it is in a form that we can't even see at that particular point. Microplastics were there, okay? And they see, if you eat like seafood, especially now, there's no supermarket in Nairobi, like a proper supermarket you'll go and not find sushi. It's present now with us. We have it, right? And you're going to take sushi and seafood is inside there. You're going to eat it raw. You are going to be exposed not only to group B, streptococcus, but also to microplastics. It's just as plain as it is. In Europe, I think in 2018, I'm not sure, there was an outbreak of streptococcus, the group B type. 228 people were actually hospitalized. If you have no idea as of now why such a forum is important, 600 million people by WHO numbers, 600 million people every year exposed to a foodborne illness in one way or the other. Out of that number, 420,000 people will not make it out alive. They will pass, okay? Out of those people who will pass, 40% will be children under 5, okay? And the issues that are emerging in all these foodborne disease, microplastics is a huge part of it. I saw they started a study of microplastics in expectant women in Europe, and women are found with close to 14 to 24 different types of plastics in micro form in the bloodstream, and they're actually passable to kids. And so this is not a small area to play with, and we have no, as we were mentioning, data as it is currently in our current setup in our region here on how to approach this. And our waste management system is also not the best. So here we have PET. Currently, if you visit the Union complex, that is the one in Gigiri, if you have a bottle of water like this, maybe in your car you can come in with it. However, you cannot purchase, nor in any meeting will you find PET being used to serve water. Because we can't say the same, we can't be preaching what we know and then consuming from the same. So this is a very key emerging issue in the area of food safety. Also, if you use PET, the ones that are carry food home, and then you decide to warm your food in the microwave using the PET which you carried on with, that is accelerating the breakdown of the plastic itself. You are able to expose, you are increasing the likelihood of being exposed to microplastics and the components that form things like PET. So key emerging issue, yes, likely to weigh in the near future. Thank you.
That is a very elaborate contribution, Bruce. So,
when it comes to microplastics migration into our foods, it's also of great importance and negatively. We have lots of plastics, but in this circular economy, are they regulatory compliant? If they say 30 microns and maybe above, are all the manufacturers using plastics that are regulatory compliant? If not, what is the problem? And how can we be helped? For my own research, as a food safety team leader, I happen to do supplier evaluations. I always audit our suppliers to the company. But I was surprised to find out that out of the number of plastic processors we have in Uganda, I think it's only 2 who knew what migratory tests are. And we don't have a lab for migratory tests in Uganda. We only send our plastics to Kenya, or we put the burden on the processors to do it abroad. So we don't have like the testing laboratories, enough testing laboratories for migratory tests in East Africa. And we have to work upon that. If the plastic is not meeting the requirement, then we should not use it. Even the regulator should put emphasis that such and such a company is processing its product, is processing and packing products in such and such a plastic, it's not compliant. So please, people, do not consume anything packed in such a packaging.
So in less than 1 minute, Mr. Sharif, are there any emerging technologies you can use to prevent the entry of such plastics into food?
Well, it's not about plastic, but your question, previous question about how safe is the water, right?
Okay.
And I was talking about rapid technologies. I'll give you a quick taste of how we can actually test right now this water sample in just 1 minute. In 1 minute, I'll let you know how safe is this water. I'm giving you a taste of the latest technology that is now available, right? I'm just opening this sealed water bottle in front of you guys, and we open it. It's a sealed bottle.
And I know the QCM for Excel who make this water, Dr. Shroff.
Okay, so this is the rapid test. We will dip it in the water sample, and we put it back in the tube, and then the machine is ready. We click on the app for testing water. We select AquaSnap Total, which is for water, and then we activate this. 1, 2, squeeze the reagent down, shake it for 5 seconds, and then we open this and run the test. And you guys will tell the results. It takes just 10 seconds. If the result is less than 20, it's a safe water. Anything above 20, well, you know. How much it is? 3.
3.
So it's absolutely safe what you have been drinking.
Wow, wow, wow.
Round of applause for Excel, Quencha.
So this is, now let me share this is my micro lab. I carry my macro lab in my bag. I can do total count, I can do coliform, I can do E. coli, I can test salmonella, I can test listeria, I can test allergens with this very machine. So technology has become like this. It's so rapid and so simple. It's handheld microbiology lab, right? So I just gave you a taste of the water test.
Doctor, it's 3L.
It's relative light units. Yeah, because what happens is, anything which is living has a cell. Inside the cell, you have the RNA and DNA, right? So ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the building block of RNA, energy molecule, so it detects the energy molecule. So anything which is organic, including bacteria and virus, will be detected. It cannot differentiate which bacteria it is because it's a 10-second test, but it can tell it is safe for drinking or not. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. A round of applause for Hygiena as we close. Because of lack of time, I'm not going to give you, because if you give me 1 minute, you're going to take 10 minutes. So it's been a pleasure having you, my panel, and I want to throw a challenge to all of us that there's a story that is told of a hummingbird. Once there was a forest fire, and all the animals gathered at the entry of the forest, unable to do anything, waiting for their fate. And then there was a little bird called the hummingbird. It asked itself, what could it do? And it went into the river and started coming back with water, little by little. And all the other animals were skeptical, like, what impact are you making? But what did the little bird say? I am doing what I can. So I challenge you today to do what you can. Start where you are. Be the hummingbird. Thank you.